All right, mathematicians, I'm back. We're going to do three more proofs dealing with parallel lines. All right, we'll start with the given. We've got angle C and, line C and line D parallel. So if those two lines are parallel, maybe it'd be better if I put parallel symbols in a little different spot. If these two lines are parallel, and you got this transversal here, then these alternate exterior angles must be congruent. So we can say angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. Again, if we have parallel lines, alternate exterior angles are congruent. Well, if those alternate exterior angles are congruent, then we can put this statement together with this one. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and angle 2 is congruent to 3. So now we can say, we could replace one with the other, so we can swap those two and say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's just by substitution, or you could call it the transitive property. You're replacing something with what it's congruent to. Now let's focus on 1 and 2 being congruent. So angle 1 congruent to angle 2. Well, that sets us up for alternate exterior angles that are congruent. So these lines must be parallel. So we can say A must be parallel to B because alternate exterior angles are congruent. Let's look at another one. Again, feel free to pause and work it out yourself and then check the video to see if you got it right. All right, C and D are parallel here. So since those are parallel, then these corresponding angles must be congruent. So we can say angle 2 is congruent to angle 3 because corresponding angles are congruent. If you have parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. Now we can use substitution. We've got angle 1 and 3 are congruent, 2 and 3 are congruent, so now we can say 1 and 2 are congruent by substitution, or you could say the transitive property. Now let's focus on that 1 and 2 being congruent. Well, 1 is made up of line A and D, and then angle 2 is made up of B and D. So now we've got these corresponding angles are congruent, so the lines AB must be parallel. So line A must be parallel to B because corresponding angles are congruent. Let's look at one more. All right, this time we've got angle 1 and angle 3 congruent, and C and D are parallel. All right, so C, line D parallel. If those are parallel, then these alternate exterior angles must be congruent. So angle 2 congruent to angle 3 because alternate exterior angles are congruent. And now we've got 1 congruent to 3 and angle 2 congruent to angle 3. So now we can say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 by substitution. Now let's focus on those two being congruent over here. So angle 2 and 1 are congruent. Well, that uses lines A and B and line D as the transversal. So if these corresponding angles are congruent, then these lines must be parallel. So we can say A must be parallel to B because our corresponding angles are congruent. Again, we've reached that prove statement. So hopefully these videos have been helpful in preparing you for proving lines to be parallel.